Saints. This is a continuation in our Romans chapter 9 study survey, and we're looking at a short survey of Israel's history. And we're looking at a short survey of Israel's history because we're here in Romans chapter 9, whereas Paul makes mention about Israel and what happened to Israel. And this is a very crucial point in understanding Romans 9, 10, and 11 and what happened to Israel, and also the mystery itself. We'll get to that later there. But let's look at this here. What we're looking at Romans chapter 9, and this is lesson 4. Lesson 4, and this is a short survey of the history of Israel. And we're looking at the 5 trials of Israel, and we're going to hopefully, if we get time, we'll look at their entrance into the law contract. We'll look at their entrance into the law contract. And what we're going to see Israel, the main issue with them is they thought they were better than what they were. God led them out of Egypt. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but God's main intent was to sanctify himself, sanctify himself a people, and set himself apart a people who will be who he called them to be. And we see it in the scriptures ourselves, and we're told things like in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, wherefore come out from among them and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you, and I will be a father unto you, and you shall be my sons and daughters, saith the Lord Almighty. And that's another thing we want to look at. I want to take a quick overview of what we went over last week in a sense and sum this up, because we're going to need it in going to the 5 trials. Because what God was doing is God was putting his Jehovah's grace and mercy on display with them, and also he was doing it. He was showing himself to be the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth, and we're going to see that. Let's look at that. Look at Genesis 14. We're not going to spend too much time on this, but I just want to highlight these things here. Look at Genesis 14, verse 19. We're just looking at the verse at hand. And he blessed him and said, blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. Now look, and you see Most High God, and that's in view of God showing his power as being the Most High God. And again, we know those other, we know there's no other God but one God, but in view of what comes up in the mind of men as they took to themselves different gods and everything else. Look at 46, Genesis 46, verse 3. And he said, I am God, the God of thy father. Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation. Now you see God making his power known through the nation of his own creation, Israel, his people. They were to be an extension of his holiness. So now, not only are you going to see, when it says God, the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth, Satan also had a plan, and we're going to look at it in a second, to be exactly the same thing, to be like the Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. But you see here, God's plan and purpose to possess the earth was going to be through Israel. Look at Exodus chapter 3, verse 13. And Moses said unto God, behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, the God of your fathers has sent me unto you, they shall say to me, what is his name? What shall I say unto them? And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am have sent me unto you. Now when they are being shown his name Jehovah, in other words, I am, you fill in the blank. And when we're going to look at the 7 Jehovah compound names, and even the 5 mandates of what God's going to be to Israel in those 7 mandates, 7 Jehovah compound names. This is what they're going to call on him to be for them. In let's just move on. And we're going to get to that when we get to looking at that issue. Look at Genesis 28. And he was afraid and said, how dreadful is this place? This is none other but, notice this, the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. God also showed he's going to set up his residence here on the earth. And that would have took place the second Sabbath after the next, had it came to pass in the beginning. That would have took place there. But look at Isaiah. Now look at Isaiah. Look at Satan's plan and purpose here. Isaiah 14 verse 12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hadst said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. You see all that, what's being shown there, and that will take place in how Satan, what he did to the world, his influence on the world. And notice did weaken the nations, plural. And thou hast said in thy heart, I will sit into the heaven. Those 5 I wills. I will ascend into the heaven. I will exalt. Notice what he's doing. Not only is he just being there, he's ascending, he's exalting. He will, notice this, will also sit, will sit also. So in other words, he said he'll sit also. Well, evidently he must be sitting. You see this, exalt my throne. And he's also going to he wants to sit on another throne upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Now, of course, that's a very fascinating issue to cover there, Isaiah 14, and there's so much that we can take a look at associated with that. But for time's sake, we want to stick to the issue here about the short survey of Israel's history. And looking at that there, you see God had a plan with man, and he had a plan with the earth, and he had a plan as being possessor of both heaven and earth. But Satan also had a plan, and he also has a plan for mankind, and had a man follow after his will and his way. And we see, and you're going to see God establishing a people and giving the people his law. But then you're going to see Satan's people to say, hey, look, before they did that, they put him into captivity. 400 years, more than 400 years in captivity. They were, Satan in his own boastfulness would say, hey, these are people of God, but I got them in captivity here. They're in the iron furnace. I got the mouth of the lion. They're mine. But let's take a look at more verses here. And what we want to take a look at is the 5 trials. God took Israel through 5 trials to prove them. And you're going to see over and over again, he wanted to prove them. And he wants to put his Jehovah's grace and mercy on display that he will provide. And he's going to tell them over and over, look, I brought you out of Egypt. I did this. I provided for you. You need to follow my Jehovah's grace and mercy. And let's just look at that. Look at the first trial here. Look at Exodus 15:22. So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink of the water of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore, the name of it was called Marah. Now, the waters were bitter because of some of the plague, one of the plagues that God put upon Egypt over there. Look at verse 24. And the people murmured against Moses, saying, what shall we drink? And he cried unto the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, and when he had cast into the waters were made sweet. There he made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them. Notice that he proved them. Now I'm going to just stop there because you see the people, it says, murmured against Moses, saying, what shall we drink? And he cried unto the Lord. And now you see the people, and they're murmuring, God providing. Look at verse 26. And he said, but notice, he proved them. That was, and you're going to see what the proving is all about. Let's just look at it. Look at verse 26. And he said, if thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord, thy God, and will do that which is right in his sight, and will give ear to his commandments, and keep his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the Lord that, notice this, healeth thee. That's a Jehovah mandate. And that's a Jehovah compound name there. That's him being I am. Notice the for I am. And all you have to do is just, I am the Lord, the Jehovah that healeth thee. And he said he'll be the healing unto them. And when they should have hearkened unto that, they should have said, well, of course we're going to do your commandment. Of course we're going to walk in your way. Of course we're going to do your statutes. Look at the second trial here. Look at Exodus 16. Look at verse 2. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel, notice this here, murmured against Moses and against Aaron in the wilderness. They're doing it again. And the children of Israel said unto them, would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. For ye have brought us forth into the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Now you see the people that murmured again because no food. Now they just saw God provided water for them, and now they're murmuring again. And notice what they make mention about. We would to God that we had died by the hand of, notice this, the Lord. I mean, that's Israel being ungrateful. That's Israel being thinking they're better than what they were. And they just they just came out of captivity. They're acting like they had it better in Egypt, but they actually didn't. And what they were doing was they were almost doing like people do today. People today treat God as he's a genie or a butler. And it's what have you done for me lately? And I mean, it's sad to say that there, but the heart of man, when he goes after this world, he can be, we like to use the word complacent, or we like to use the words that man can, well, you call it like it is, he can be full of himself, and are full of it. But the idea is that Israel, you're going to see, they're going to murmur, and God's proving them. It's not that he's trying them. They're going out there, and these circumstances are just as they are. They're just partaking. Notice where they're at. They're in the wilderness. It's not like, fish just jumping in their mouths or anything like that. So, but what God's doing is he's providing for them. He's bringing them out here, and he's going to provide for them. But let's take a look at more verses there. And that was the second trial here. Look at, let's see. Let's take a look at a little more about the third trial. Let's take a look at more, because I was going to look at the third, but we didn't look at when God did provide. Let's just look at that there. Exodus 16, verse 4. Then said the Lord unto Moses, behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you. Notice this, for you. And the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may, notice this, that I may prove them. Well, let me just, it says exactly what he's doing. Whether they will walk in my law or no. That's the issue of proving. That's the issue of proving them. He's telling them, he's either the first time he's providing for them, and the second time, and proving in that sense there that they will fall upon his Jehovah's grace and mercy. Here's another issue with him, one proving them to see if they will walk in his law or no. He's telling them, I'll give you food, All you got to do is just gather a certain rate. Just follow my law. How hard can it be? Look at verse 5. And it shall come to pass that on the sixth day that they shall prepare that which they shall bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. Notice this. On the sixth day, it's going to be twice because they're going to be providing for the seventh there. Well, because the seventh, they're going to be doing the work. Well, maybe I'll just read it and it'll explain itself. Look at verse 6. And Moses and Aaron said unto all the children of Israel, at even then ye shall know that the Lord hath brought you out of the land of Egypt. Notice this, that ye shall know. This is, I'm not going to say this is the point, but this should all have been brought up in their minds, that he, the same one, the same Lord, I am, he called, has brought them out of Egypt. He showed that power here. He's showing it here. Look at verse 7. And in the morning, then ye shall see notice this, the glory of the Lord. For he that heareth your murmurings against the Lord. And what are we that ye murmur against us? Moses said, this shall be when the Lord shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full. For the Lord that heareth your murmurings, which ye murmur against him. Notice this, against him. What are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against the Lord. And what he's doing now, he's setting the stage. He's letting them know, look, when you're murmuring, it's not me you're murmuring against. I'm just the messenger boy bringing the doctrine to you, bringing the word of the Lord to you, the prophet. But they actually were murmuring against the Lord when they were doing this, because it was, hate to use the word of slap in the face, but it was God brought them out of Egypt. He's providing for them. He wants to set them apart, sanctify them. All they got to do is walk in his way. Fall upon his Jehovah's grace and mercy, and be a people separated and holy unto him. Look at verse 16. This is the thing which the Lord hath commanded, gather of it every man according to his eating. Hey, you could have had some big guys who could eat a little more. He could get more, as long as he's going to eat it. And look, a omer for every man according to the number of your persons. Take ye every man for them which are in his tents. And the children of Israel did so, gathered. Oh, look, so far so good, huh? And gathered, some more, some less. They gathered little, had no lack. They gathered every man according to his eating. And the children of Israel did so and gathered, some more, some less. And when they did meet it with Omer, they gathered much. They gathered much and had nothing over. He that gathered little had no lack. They gathered every man according to his eating. Well, it sounds like things are going pretty good. Sounds like they're following the Lord's law and his command. But that's all, it's going to be short-lived. And we see that with Israel, the children of Israel. Over and over, we see things like that. We see God showing his Jehovah's grace and mercy with them. And then all of a sudden it says, and then it'll turn around and they'll walk according to this world again. Their heart will walk like the Lord will send them in there to battle the nations or be victorious and show God's power with the nations. But then they'll go in there and look at what the nations, how they lived, and say, well, wait a minute, look at this glory, and want to partake in that. But let's move on. Look at verse 19. And Moses said, let no man leave of it till the morning. Notice and this is not just Moses saying it, this is God saying it through Moses. Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses, but some of them left it until the morning, and it bred worms and stank, and Moses was wroth with them. You see that? And they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating, and when the sun waxed hot, it melted. And it came to pass that on the sixth day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man. And the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And he said unto them, this is that which the Lord hath said, tomorrow is the rest. That's why they gathered more. Rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which ye will bake today, and seethe it ye will seethe, and that which remaineth lay up for you to be kept until the morning. See, they were to have they would have more for the next day. They laid up until the morning as Moses bade, and it did not stink, neither were there worms therein. Notice this. And Moses said, eat that today, for today it is the Sabbath unto the Lord. Today ye shall not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather, but on the seventh day, which is the Sabbath, in it shall there shall be none. And it came to pass that they went out, some of the people notice this, on the seventh day for to gather, and they found none. Notice this, I'm going to read that again. And it came to pass that there went out some of them of the people on the seventh day for to gather, and found none. And the Lord said unto Moses, how long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? Notice this, what the Lord said to Moses. And Moses didn't do it, but Moses is leading the people, and he gave them a direct command, and they went out on the Sabbath day to get bread. You know why? Because they didn't they didn't take up some of them didn't take up twice as much. If they had took up twice as much as they were instructed, it's not like they forgot. It's the idea is that the heart of man, I don't care if it was in Israel's program or our program, we have to follow this world and what we think. Well, I know what God is really trying to say. Man does it all day, folks. He does it today as well. Let's look at the third trial. Let's take a look at the third trial here. We're trying to move a little fast here because we got a lot to cover. Hopefully, I want to get through the 5 trials and hopefully into the law. Look at the third trial. Look at Exodus 17. And all the congregation of the children of Israel journeyed from the wilderness of Sin. That's a pretty descriptive name for wilderness. But, well, you'll see. After their journeys, according to the commandment of the Lord, and pitched in Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink. Now notice, they saw what the Lord did before. He provided water, he provided food. There should be no reason why they should murmur. There was no water for the people to drink. Wherefore the people did chide with Moses and said, give us water that we may drink. And Moses said unto them, why chide ye with me? Wherefore do ye tempt the Lord? Well, see, they were speaking to him. See, he was the mouthpiece of the people. He was the mouthpiece of God, and God knew it, and they knew it. And the people, look at verse 3, and the people thirsted there for water. And the people, notice this, murmured against Moses and said, wherefore is this that thou hast brought us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our cattle with thirst? And Moses cried unto the Lord, saying, what shall I do unto this people? They be almost ready to stone me. See, they were looking upon that as you're trying to kill us. So that's why he said they be almost ready to stone me. But again, these people are again murmuring. They should have known that God was going to provide, and he did. Look at the fourth trial. This is the fourth trial that God proved them. And it was his word, it was his Jehovah-ness that they ignored. I just put it like that. They ignored his Jehovah-ness, grace, and mercy. Remember, they asked, what name should we know you by? Instead of them calling him Jehovah Rapha, Jehovah Shamar, Jehovah Ra, instead of them calling upon him, guess what? They murmured. They murmured there. Look at Exodus 17 and the fourth trial. And then came Amalek and fought with Israel in Rephidim. Moses said unto Joshua, choose us out men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. Now you see what's happening here. Um, Moses understands that the power of God is on his side. Moses knows God as being the most high God, possessor of heaven and earth. Moses knows that God's not going to allow them to be defeated because they are an extension of his holiness, and they are, remember we looked at the Jacob issue there, showing that about Israel prevailing among men, over men, and showing that power, Israel's power and strength in the world, on the earth. And you see Moses doing the same thing, but Amalek is coming to wipe the nation out. That's what he's coming to do. And it's almost as if Satan is watching and seeing Israel not hearkening unto the voice of the Lord, not trusting in him, not understanding or not believing that he will provide for them. So with this test, maybe he's thinking that their hearts are going to fail them, that they're going to say, we don't trust that he's going to help us. But let's just move on with it. Verse 9 again, Moses said unto Joshua, choose us out men and go out fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand at the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. So Joshua did as Moses had said unto him and fought with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. And it came to pass when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed. When he let his hand down, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands were heavy. So they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat thereon. And Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands on the one on the one side and the other on the other side. And his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Joshua, notice what this says, and Joshua discomforted Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. Now, again, this is another opportunity for God to prove them. And you say, well, where's the proving in that? Well, you see the power. You see God's power being put on display, and it's by his power he's providing for them again. It's him providing and being that I am, and that victor. Him showing him as being the Almighty and the Almighty God through Israel. And if that wouldn't prove him, what else could? I mean, what else should? I mean, because you see, he brought him out of Egypt. He provided food and water. You got an enemy coming amongst them and to try to capture, kill him off, and God providing again. But you would think that would be the thing that would bring him upon his Jehovah's grace and mercy? No. Let's take a look at the fourth trial. Let's look at the fourth trial here. We looked at the fourth trial. Let's pick it back up here. We were in Exodus 17, verse 13. Well, you know what? Let's see. Just trying to see if we got more time here. Yeah, let's just look. Let's just pick it up here at verse 14. We were there. Let's take a look at verse 14. Verse 14. And the Lord said unto Moses, write this for a memorial and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, for I will utterly put out of remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar and called the name of it Jehovah Nessi. Now, you see what's happening there? Jehovah Nessi. And see, that right there is part of what God, in the whole I am, that whole I am concept there, Jehovah Nessi is what's being shown there. And Israel ought to see, well, they should, they ought to see God being what he called, what they didn't even ask him to be, but this is what he called. Moses knew what was going on, and they built an altar because he recognized what he was unto them. So come over to Psalms, because I want to take a look at this. Come over to Psalms 83. And this is significant to understand as well here in Psalms 83, because this is what they were intent on doing. Look at verse 4. And they have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. Notice that, one consent, that they are confederate against thee. And it's going to give a name of those 10 nations there. Now, if you get time, take a look at that. Take a look at the 10 nations there that were confederate against Israel. Now, this is something that's going to happen in ages to come. But what you see is the nations of the earth going against Israel there. And we saw that over there with when we looked at the Lot situation. We looked at when Abram and Lot and all that, when we seen those 9 kings, and they went against them there, and they only took 318 men, and God was putting his power on display as the Lord Almighty there as well, where 318 defeated all these kings, those 9 kings who they were confederate against them. But then we covered that already. But what you see taking place here, you see God proving Israel. He's proving them to show, Moses understood it. And Moses had hoped that they would understand this as well, that Jehovah Nissi he built an altar for a remembrance, so they can remember that. Why wouldn't they just remember it on their own there of what he did in saving them? But let's move on. Come over, take a look at the 5th trial. Let's look at the 5th trial here. Look at Exodus 18. Exodus 18. Let's take a look at let's look at verse 5. Exodus 18, verse 5. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, Moses' father-in-law came with his sons and his wife onto Moses into the wilderness, where he had encamped in the Mount of God, at the Mount of God. And he said unto Moses, I, thy father-in-law Jethro, are come unto thee, and thy wife and her 2 sons with her. And Moses went out to meet his father-in-law, and did obeisance, and kissed him, and they asked each other of their welfare, and they came into the tent. And Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord hath done unto Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, and all the travail that had come upon them by the way, and how the Lord delivered them. Now just hold on. Now I want you to see what's happening here. Moses is explaining to Jethro, his father-in-law, all that the Lord hath done for, and he's a Gentile. All that the Lord hath done for Israel, and what the Lord hath done. Look at what it happens here in verse 9. And Jethro rejoiced for all the goodness which the Lord hath done to Israel, whom he had delivered out of the hands of the Egyptians. And Jethro said, Blessed be the Lord, who hath delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of the Pharaohs, who hath delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know, notice this, now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods, for in the thing wherein they dealt proudly, he was above them. Now see, you see what's taking place here? What took place is you have a Gentile here you see God taking effect. His Jehovah's grace and mercy, him being the most high God, possessor of heaven and earth, and the Almighty God was all being put on display here, because this should have taken effect on Israel. Israel's heart should have rejoiced, as verse 9 says, for all the goodness which the Lord hath done. Israel should have been ones that were, wow, praising God, and blessed be the Lord, as Jethro acknowledged. But you're going to see Israel, that was not the case with them. And you see this was the fifth trial, because it affected the heart of him, but Jethro, but not the heart of Israel. Israel didn't even acknowledge that. They didn't even acknowledge what was said there, what was done. We're going to look at Israel's entrance into the law. Let's look at their entrance into the law. Look at Exodus 19. Exodus 19. Look at verse 3. Exodus 19, verse 3. Yeah, verse 3. And Moses went up unto God, and the Lord called him out of the mountain, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, Ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Now, I don't want to get into the details there, because I'm after something else here, because you see it says Moses went unto God and the Lord, and unto I am Jehovah. The same person. But you're looking at the titles there. The same reason why he says house of Jacob and children of Israel, because house of Jacob ought to mean something that God wanted them to be. But then children of Israel, that they're the children of Israel. And he's saying, you've seen what I've done unto the Egyptians, and how I bear you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. What I'm going to do, I'm going to look at the fourth verse again, just to refresh our memory, to go on down into that interest into the law. But you see God, in God proving Israel, those 5 trials he took them through, and they actually didn't even acknowledge that he brought them out of Egypt. He bare on them on eagle's wings. He provided as Jehovah, as the I am, and he provided the water. You've seen all that there, but you would think that they will fall upon his Jehovah's grace and mercy by now, that they would say, oh wow, he is the most high God, possessor of heaven and earth. He is Jehovah. You think they'll be building up altars all around everywhere they go? They should have built up one in Myra when the waters became bitter, and they should have built up an altar everywhere they went there. But you know what? The one thing they did do is build that calf. And they built the calf based upon what they thought. Let's take a look at some things. So let's pick it back up here in Exodus 19. Let's look at chapter 4. Let's look at verse 4 again. Look at verse 4 again. And look at what the Lord said. Ye seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Verse 5, Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. You notice what's being said here. What kind of, you would think anybody would say, well, sure. Look at verse 6. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. And Moses came and called for the elders of the people, and laid before their faces all these which the Lord commanded him. And all the people answered together and said, All that the Lord hath spoken we will do. And Moses returned of the people unto the Lord. Now, the Lord asked many things unto the people, and the people could not do all that. But it's almost like if we give, when someone takes you and they take you on a brand new job and they show you the whole thing and they tell you, oh, you got to do this and do that. Now, they don't really expect you to do every single aspect of it each time you walk in there. And the same thing with our children. Our children know all that has to be done as far as cleaning and cooking and every other thing inside and outside the house. They're not going to come and do it all in the same day. But the idea is what you want. You want one to serve out of love, out of understanding your love and walking in your way. And the Lord knows they weren't going to be perfect, but he knows that by now. If he didn't know it before, but of course he did. But look at verse. They said all that in verse 8. And the people answered together, notice together, and said, all that the Lord has spoken we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Moses, lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee, and believe thee forever. And Moses told the words of the people unto the Lord. Now watch this here. Watch the Lord. Well, let me just go ahead and Moses told the words of the people unto the Lord. Verse 10, and the Lord said unto Moses, go unto the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes and be ready against the third day. For the third day the Lord will come down on the sight of all the people upon the mount. And thou shalt set the bounds of the people round about, saying, take heed to yourselves that ye go not up into the mount or touch the border of it. Whomsoever touch the mount shall surely be put to death. There shall not a hand touch it, but he shall surely be stoned or shot through, whether it be beast or man. It shall not live. When the trumpet soundeth long, they shall come up to the mount. Now, you would think, what is going on here? Why is God so upset with them? Well, they said all that the Lord has spoken we will do. And instead of falling upon his Jehovah's grace and mercy, they decided they can do it on their own. Sure. But people say, well, wait a minute, aren't they following his law? Aren't they? They're going to be doing they're going to be doing those commands based upon their own heart, suppose their own willingness, and saying, yeah, we can do it. Not the idea of saying, we see your law, Lord. We want to follow upon your ways. We need you to be the I am that you gave us. And they will fall upon his Jehovah's grace and mercy when they did not walk accordingly. But look at all this says here. And another thing, look at verse 11, and be ready against the third day, for the third day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people. When we see in the gospel, well, even in our epistles, when it talks about the third day, being raised the third day, there were so many significant things about the third day, something happening where the Lord will provide. I did a study on that there about according to the scriptures there. But when 1 Corinthians 15 talks about, and he was buried, rose again the third day according to the scriptures. And I showed just some of the verses where it talks about the third day. Now the Lord is providing. And that was a type of the resurrection and what would take place then. But you see Israel entering into that law contract there. They're entering into that law contract, and instead of them, as I said, falling upon Jehovah's grace and mercy, they thought they were better than what they were. They thought, oh, sure, we can do it. We are what we are. And, we don't need to go into them, the people rising up and playing all. We don't need to get into that there. What I like to do is take a look at the Balak and Balaam situation. I like to look at the Balak and Balaam situation because Again, this is a short survey of Israel's history. And if you want to know anything, got any questions or comments, please feel free to leave me a comment or question there. But let's take a look at some things. And I want to take a look at Balak and Balaam, because it's significant to understand that as well. Look at over here in Numbers. Look at Numbers 23. Numbers 23. And let's take a look at verse 5. Numbers 23, verse 5. And the Lord put a word in Balaam's mouth and said, return unto Balak, and thus shalt thou speak. And he returned unto him, and lo, he stood by his burnt sacrifice, and he and all the princes of Moab. And he took up his parable and said, Balak, the king of Moab, hath brought me from Aram, out of the mountains of the east, saying, come, curse me Jacob, and come, defy Israel. You see what's going on here? Balak, the Lord put a word in Balaam's mouth, and he said, return to Balak. Now, thus thou shalt speak. And he stood by his burnt offering sacrifice, says, and he and all the prince of Moab. And it says he took up his parable and said, Balak the king of Moab hath brought me from Aram out of the mountains of the east, saying, come curse me Jacob, and to come defy Israel. And I had to read that again for you, because what I want you to understand is now you see someone wanting to wipe the nation out again. And they're going to need God. They're going to need the Lord to be the I am all over again. And notice, to defy Israel. Look at verse 8. How shall I curse whom God hath not cursed? How shall I defy whom the Lord hath not defied? For from the top of the rocks I see him. From the hills I behold him. Lo, the people shall dwell alone, and shall not be reckoned among, notice this, among the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob, and the number of the fourth part of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and let my last end be like his. Now, you notice how much, how the people have grown, how Israel have grown as a people. He's talking about the number of them, how great the number, how many of them there are. Look at verse 11. And Balak said unto Balaam, now notice, Balak said unto Balaam, what hast thou done unto me? I took thee to curse mine enemies, and behold, thou hast blessed them altogether. Now, Balak he says he counts Israel as his enemies. And he said, and he answered and said, must I not take heed to speak that which the Lord hath put in my mouth? And Balak said unto him, come, I pray thee, with me unto another place, from whence thou mayest see them. Thou shalt see but the uttermost part of them, and shall not see them all, and curse me them from thence. Now, you see, again, it's a multitude of them. They're great. And he wants them to curse him. But he says, must I not take heed to speak that which the Lord hath put in my mouth? And then Balak said, come, I pray thee, with me unto another place, from whence thou mayst seest them, that thou shalt see but the most utter part of them, and shall not see them all, and curse me them from thence. What you see, again, you see Balak trying to get Balaam to curse Israel. Israel is his enemy. And why? Well, Israel at that time was faring very well. They were, the whole nations of the world could look. And that's why you see Israel in that part of the map, in the Middle East. They're in the middle part of the world, where all the world has the same vantage point to see, and the way it ought to have been, the glory of God taking place over there. Israel, even though they had those 5 courses of punishments, which we're going to be looking at, happening unto them, they had interludes of blessings as well. People can look over there and see, wow, man, they're everything is wonderful there. And if you don't think that that's the case, that the whole world had a vantage point of Israel and could see that Israel was the place to be, so to speak, and Egypt as well. Remember who was in Egypt for 400 years? Israel. The whole world has came and went onto Israel and or Egypt, where Israel was at that time. You know why? Because they saw it was the most prosperous place in the world. That was the one piece of land that they took over and so many different people wanted to take over that land. Why? How did they know about it? How did the Romans know about Israel? How did Alexander know about the Egyptian? I mean, that's because they all had the same vantage point. They all had the same vantage point, and it was actually Satan and his angels sending those men to defy Israel. Because how else would they know? And you see, when you look at the book of Daniel about the Prince of Grecia. It talks about the Prince of Grecia shall come. The Prince of Grecia, that was Satan's influence, Satan's angel influencing the land of Greece there. And he gave power unto whomsoever he will, he give it. And that's another study there. We went over a little bit about that in Romans chapter 8 when we looked at the manifestation of the sons of God, about the creature and the creation. If you want to know about that issue there, about the angelic influence, take a look at that in the zodiac, how man worships the stars and all that. Take a look at that study over there in Romans chapter 8 study about the angelic influence. But let's just move on here. We're running short on time. Let's come back to Numbers 23. Numbers 23, and let's take a look at verse 14. And this is the what we're after here. And he brought him to the field of Zophim, to the top of Mizgah, and built 7 altars and offered a bullock and a ram on every altar. And he said unto Balak, stand here by the burnt offering, while I meet the Lord yonder. And the Lord met Balaam and put a word in his mouth and said, go again unto Balak and say thus. When he came unto him, behold, he stood by his burnt offering, and the princes of Moab with him. And Balak said unto him, what hath the Lord spoken? And he took up his parable and said, rise up, Balak, and hear. Hearken unto me, the son of Zippor. God is not a man that he should lie. Now notice what God has to say to Balak. Because you see Balak, remember what Balak said about Israel being his enemy. God is not a man that he should lie, neither the son of man that he should repent. He hath said, and shall he not do it? Or hath he spoken, and shall he not make it good? Behold, I have received commandment to bless, and he hath blessed, and I cannot reverse it. He hath not beheld iniquity in Jacob, neither hath he seen perseverance in Israel. The Lord his God is with him. And he's talking about Jacob and Israel. And the shout of a king is among them. God hath brought them out of Egypt. He hath, as it were, the strength of an unicorn. Surely there is no enchantment against Jacob, neither is there any divination against Israel. According to this time, it shall be said of Jacob and of Israel, what God hath wrought. Behold, the people shall rise up as a great lion, and lift up himself as a young lion. He shall not lie down until he eat of the prey and drink of the blood of the slain. Balak said unto Balaam, neither curse them all, nor bless them all. What you see here is God showing the power of Israel. God showing, I have blessed them. I'm not going to take that back. And I'm with them. And then when Balak heard that, Balak said, neither curse them all nor bless them all. In other words, if you're not gonna curse them, well, if you're not gonna bless them, hey, don't curse them. You just leave it alone. And now this wasn't the only enemy that God had or Israel had, but Balak was significant because what you see take place there was Balak's heart had been stirred up by Satan. His heart had been stirred up by Satan, and what he wanted to do was, as he said, Israel was his enemies. And what he actually wanted was them to be cursed. He knew, he saw what Balaam was about, and he saw Balaam as what he was there, and he thought that if he would ask Balaam to curse Israel, that he would do that for him. Again, he did not hearken unto him. He hearkened unto the voice of the Lord. And all this is significant, folks, to understand this. This was God showing Israel that you ought to hearken unto my words. You ought to hearken unto me, not hearken unto man, and not hearken onto your own way and your own will. And again, look at what I did to one of your enemies. But again, we're gonna pick it back up here next week because we're running out of time here. But I wanted to take a look at that. There, the 5 trials, Israel's entrance into the law, and then the Balak and Balaam issue there. And folks, I really wish we could go into more, but it would make this a very exhaustive. And when I say, I'm not saying that that's not worth it to go into that. That's not what I'm saying at all. But as we're doing this in the midst of the Romans chapter 9, we want to be able to pick it back up and get back into the verses in Romans chapter 9, because actually we're just in the first 7 verses there, 7-8 verses there. So we want to be able to pick it back up. So we don't want to make this a 24 video lesson just in that. So I'm kind of just hitting the little highlights here is all I'm doing here. But next week, we're going to pick it up there. We'll probably look at the 5 courses of punishments. We'll see where we're at that time. But I want to thank everyone for watching. And until next time, thank you.